In today's video, I'm going to show you guys how to build a stunning 4K gaming PC build around an all-white colour scheme. A build packed with components that, for the most part, won't break the bank, but more on that a little bit later, and are fairly easy to put together. This is a system that's going to provide great performance in everything from esports titles like Fortnite to AAA titles like Battlefield 6 and Ark Raiders 2. I'll be walking you through the parts I've picked and why, how to put this system together from start to finish, and looking at the gaming benchmarks a little bit later. Let's do this. The NZXT Function Elite and Lift Elite have landed. With NZXT's magnetic switches, with Hall effect sensors for precise control, and rapid trigger functionality, the Function Elite is the perfect gaming companion. Paired up with the Lift Elite, a 57-gram ultra lightweight gaming mouse with a 26,000 DPI and up to 70 hours of battery life, you have a setup pairing built to perform. Check them out at the first links in the description below. Now then, let me begin by walking you through the parts I've selected for this build and why. Now, I said in the intro of today's video that I wanted to assemble a 4K system with parts that generally provide great value for money. Now, you're all probably aware of the situation going on with memory right now. Now, essentially what's happened is the pricing of all memory, DDR4, DDR5, doesn't matter, has gone crazy because all the AI companies just can't get enough of it so that you can generate funny videos of your cat in a sombrero, basically is what's happened. And that makes building a PC on budget right now very difficult. And I know lots of you guys are really struggling to make your builds add up. Now, the idea here is I've tried to trim as much cost as possible out of other components, out of the motherboard, the case, and even the graphics card to a degree, to hopefully leave a bit more cash there for the memory if you want to assemble this system right now. So let me talk you through the parts and how I've tried to do that. Now, in terms of the CPU, I've gone for the AMD Ryzen 5 9600X. This is a fairly modest mid-range CPU with 6 cores, 12 threads, and solid clock speeds. Now, the truth of the matter is, as you step up to the higher resolutions, the CPU choice matters less and less. That isn't to say the CPU is just not important, but when you look at that 4K gaming, even on top-end cards like a 5080 or 5090, the CPU just doesn't make all that much difference. This can commonly be found for in and around or even under the $200 price point, which makes it an exceptional value option. I've paired it up in this build with AMD's RX 9070 XT. Now, you might be going, James, the 9070 XT is not cheap, and I want to clarify, the aim of this build is not for it to be cheap. The aim is to provide 4K performance that doesn't break the bank. You see, typically, for a 4K build, people would go with an RTX 5080. That's a $1,000 GPU. This is closer to that $650 mark. In particular, I've gone for the Asus Prime model, as I find here in the UK, it's a lot cheaper than the alternatives, and in previous white 9070 XT builds, I've used this instead, the Power Color Hellhound. I marginally prefer how the Hellhound looks, but for the price premium, it just doesn't make sense. We actually use the Asus Prime 9070 XT in quite a lot of our pre-builds on Geek PC. That's my UK pre-building company, I'll link it below, and always had good experiences. You can see it's just such a lovely looking card on that white colour scheme too, which makes all the difference. In terms of the motherboard, this is another area where I've trimmed out a little bit of cost because I've gone for this, which is a brand new design from Gigabyte. It's the Eagle Wi-Fi 7 Ice. You see, typically I'd go for their B850 Elite, but this particular model trims things down a little bit, still gives us really good performance, and a frankly stunning white colour scheme for in and around $150, maybe a little bit more, but it's the cheapest whiteboard I can find. Now, if you take a look at the rear I/O, you can see where some of these sacrifices have been made. The Wi-Fi dongle's a bit dated, there's no optical audio, and we've even got a retro PS2 keyboard mouse port, but there's still 5GB USB-C, plenty of USB 3.2 ports, and 2.5GB Ethernet. Design-wise, it's absolutely gorgeous, with white RAM DIMMs, white socket cover, white mounting brackets. It's even got white PCI lanes, which are great. It's only got one M.2 heatsink cover, so obviously for your Gen 5 drive, that's fine. If you've got additional drives, it's obviously not quite as good. But for most people, it's going to be more than sufficient. For storage, I've picked up a 1TB MP44L from TeamGroup. Again, one of the best value Gen 4 NVMe drives. This build is all about trying to steal 20 here and 20 there to try and put into the memory. and of course to hope that memory prices do start to fall. This is going to be more than quick enough for gaming, your boot speeds are going to be good, and of course if you've already got a build with a good storage drive, you can always bring that over for extra storage capacity if this 1TB option isn't quite enough. The only area arguably I did splash out a little bit was the CPU cooler, but again, this Phanteks Glacier 1360 M25 G2, catchy name, was actually on promo at the time of building this system and costs a lot less than what you might expect for a design that looks really quite this nice. This uses Phanteks cheaper fans. These aren't their really expensive interlocking designs that you'll find on their D30, which is their higher end lineup, and you get this little VRM fan on the CPU block, which I think looks rather nice. I realised I haven't actually spoken about the memory model I've gone for in this build, probably because it doesn't really matter. It's any memory you can get hold of is going to be absolutely fine. This is the Ripjaws M5 RGB. As long as you've got a DDR5 kit, even if it's only 16 or 24 gigs, it will probably do you for now, and you can always add better memory, lower latency, faster speed a bit later. This kit's fairly low profile and has G.Skill's RGB heat spread on the top. It's not quite as fancy as their Trident Z5, but to be honest, you don't need it, and obviously any money we can save is going to be beneficial. Talking of money that we can save, I've got this. This is a case from Endorfy. It's their ARX 700 in white. Now, I've built in the ARX 700 in black before and was really impressed, but not the white version. So give me a moment to, I don't know if that worked, but maybe I was supposed to say unboxed. Anyway, it's here, guys, all right. It's open and it looks good. I mean, it's pretty simple. You've got a big front panel here, and if I remove this front panel, behind it, you will see, clever, it's a little magnet thing. I knew that from last time and forgot. It's got 340mm ARGB fans pre-installed with this mesh, which is gonna make this, at my best guess, one of the best performing airflow cases you can buy. At the rear, you get a 140mm fan as well pre-installed, and the tempered glass side panel comes with little toolless thumb screws, which are rather nice. Now, I do like inside that these standoffs are all black, so you can see those nice and easily, but the rubber grommets are all white. Now, it might sound really obvious, but I've seen so many cases where they get that wrong, and it's really, really annoying. I'm also going to remove the rear panel while we're here as well, check out what the cable management looks like at the back, and yeah, that isn't too bad. Now, I do prefer when they colour match the cables. However, if you look here, they have done so for the fan cables, but not for the front panel. It's not a huge issue, but I would in future love to see if these were white. I think that would make a really big difference, especially as they're going to be visible through, of course, the front panel of the case. I'm then going to go ahead and install the CPU into the motherboard, doing so by opening up the arm on the CPU socket, lining the triangles on the CPU and dropping this into place, and returning the socket cover back down. That's followed by the memory, which will be installed in the second and fourth RAM DIMM slots today. Only goes in one way round, and the labels should be facing towards the CPU. Well, finally, the SSD is toolless, so just pop this in the top NVMe slot, nice and easily, like so. The only other thing I'm going to check is what mounting hardware prep I need to do on the CPU cooler. I'm going to check this now before going ahead and moving the motherboard into the case, as that is going to be a little bit easier. Now, the good news is you do get a rather nice colour manual with this Phanteks cooler. Phanteks manual is always really, really good. And for AMD, you can see here we just need to remove the stock mounting brackets, replace them with these AMD standoffs, and then the actual cooler will pop straight on top, presumably with some thumb screws to fasten it down. So that's what I'm going to do. Take the top and the bottom brackets off, keep these safe by storing them in the motherboard box, and then add the AMD standoffs onto each corner of the CPU socket. It's then a simple case, once the motherboard assembly is complete, of sliding the motherboard into the case. It's an ATX board with ATX standoffs in an ATX case, so everything's going to be in the right locations, basically out of the box, meaning all we got to do is just slide the motherboard into place, like so, and the raised center standoff will hold it nice and still. At the back of the case, you'll also find an included bag that's got loads of accessories. Now, this accessory bag gives you some replacement black grommets. If you wanted to go for like a black and a white colour scheme, you can. That's, I suppose, quite a nice touch. And then also gives you everything from cable ties to, more importantly, if I can locate them, your motherboard screws. So we're going to have 9 screws in this little bag, which are going to secure the board into place. So the motherboard is in. I think the next step is going to be getting the CPU cooler in the top of the case. Now, this is going to operate in exhaust, essentially, and I think comes maybe slightly pre-assembled, but not completely pre-assembled. So we have got the CPU blocks. You can see that looks really rather nice. I do like what Phanteks have done there. And then we've got the radiator, which is nicely protected. And separately, we've got so much packaging material. We've got some fans, and you can see they're all daisy chained together and looking lovely, and they are going to go on the bottom of the rad just there. Now, as mentioned earlier, if you really are keen to save cash in this build, then you could go for an air cooler, you could go for a dual tower cooler instead. That would obviously keep the cost a bit lower, and I'll leave some good options linked in the description below. Now, as you can see, the radiator fans are not pre-installed, so I need to screw these down, get any of the wiring harnesses on, and then secure this up to the top of the case. If you're wondering how you do that, you just remove this little top panel with the thumb screw, and that's then going to expose the rails that we can install the radiator onto. All the screws you need for this, by the way, come included with the radiator, so check your Phanteks AIO box for those. Nice. Now, cable and wiring is going to be next. The PSU, I think, is the next thing on the agenda. Endorfy, who kindly sent the case over for today's build, also sent over this, which is their Supremo FM6 1000. Now, you definitely don't need a 1000 watt unit, so I'll link some lower wattage options down below. This one is also black in colour, meaning I will need to add some PSU cable extensions into the mix, but some cheap ones from Easy DIY Fab, which I'll link on Amazon in the description below, are going to make a lot of sense. Ultimately, you want to make sure your power supply is ATX 3.1 and has that 12 volt high power connector natively for things like the GPU. This is an AMD card, so we don't need that in today's build, but obviously if you're going NVIDIA, you will do. I'm going to go ahead and put all the modular cables I need into the back of the power supply. That's 2 for the CPU, 1 for the motherboard, and then the 8-pin GPU power cables. Screw this into the rear of the case, and then wire up the CPU to the top left, motherboard to the right hand side, and save the GPU cable for a little bit later. I'm also going to do the front panel cables at this stage, of which there are a few. We've got USB 3 Type A and USB 3 Type C. We've also got the HD audio, which goes to the bottom left, and then finally the JFP1 front panel cables to the bottom right. I'm also going to go ahead and pop the top panel back on the case at this stage, and all that's left to go is the GPU. Now then, the bit of the build I am most excited about, the GPU, and this one is box fresh, which means we've got to cut the seal. Oh, it's so satisfying. I'm so excited to put this in. I haven't actually built with the Prime card in white on the AMD side of things. I've used a nearly identical card on the NVIDIA side with the 5070. Oh, look at it. Look how nice it is. Oh, yes. Oh, that is gorgeous. Does require 3 8-pins though, so I'm not sure if I've got enough PSU cable extensions. Tell you something though, we've got a peel and a half on here. Look at this. Oh, what? That is so satisfying. Now that is what you call a GPU. Now, hovering it in to see how it looks pretty good, and we need to use the top 2 slots. And I've just realised, guess what, Daresh? Guess what?
What?
We've got another peel. Another peel.
Another peel.
Another peel.
Oh yeah, it's all coming together.
Super satisfying. I need to remove the top 2 PCI lanes, so I'm going to go ahead and do that with this little cover here. Take those off. There's 1 and 2. Push the GPU clip backwards, slide the card into place. Wait for it. Oh, that is satisfying. And then screw it down. That is super simple, super easy, and looks super good. The only problem is I think I am 1 PSU extension cable short, which means I can get 2 of them in, but I can't actually power this build up until I've ordered a 3rd one and it's arrived, which is mildly annoying, I'll admit. So on that anticlimactic note, I've just checked my supplies and it's a negative. You're gonna have to give me a day or 2 in human time, or a few seconds in video time to get this resolved. So then, performance. This is always the big question when it comes to any system, but I want to start by saying how pleased I am with the visuals. It is a little more basic in some areas, and I think the parts of the build where I tried to save some money have come out really well. Of course, you could trim even more cost out by swapping the AIO, albeit not the most expensive unit in the world, for a single or dual tower air cooler. I would recommend a dual tower, and that will again help to offset some of the cost increases we're currently seeing in memory, which is crazy, but I know some of you want to build something now, and that was was what I was trying to achieve here. Now, in terms of benchmarking, I was a little torn as to whether to test this build at 1440p or 4K. So I did both. For 1440p, Yamaha actually sent over their G-Master GB3290QSU, which is a 240Hz 32-inch IPS monitor with a 1440p resolution. It sits on their Gold Phoenix lineup, which is basically their top-end range, and I'll link it down below. Since I started with 1440p benchmarking, let's begin there. Battlefield 6 was the first game on the list, and here at 1440p high settings, this system achieved over 140 frames per second on average. This positive pattern of results carried through into the likes of Marvel's Rivals, where I also tested at the 2560 by 1440 resolution. Here the system once again did very well with over 130 frames per second on average. The final game I tested at 1440p was F1 2025, one of my personal favourites, and the in-game benchmarking mode at that 1440p ultra high preset yielded more than 230 frames per second. Stepping up to 4K, and I began with Arc Raiders, a game that's actually fairly CPU intensive, and here at the 4K high preset, this system pulled in more than 90 frames per second on average. Going to a slightly older title like Cyberpunk, a game where Nvidia typically excel when compared to AMD and a good challenge for this system, and the build still achieved a very solid 76 frames per second. While the final game to talk about was Fortnite, which I actually tested at 1080p competitive settings. That's with everything tuned down to low, except the render distance, which was set to far for maximum frame rate. And rather unsurprisingly, the average frame rate of 280 was ludicrously high. This is a system that I just really like. I think it's come out so well. The only bad thing really for me is the black cables in the case. I'd love to see these go white, and the fact that white memory is currently even more expensive than black memory, which itself is frankly silly. Are you going to build a PC now? Are you going to wait? How do you guys feel about building a system in 2026? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you in the next one.